Hello everyone, welcome to the next section of SAP Security. In this session we will be discussing about activity logs. In this section we will be discussing various logs that can be used to monitor application. Many of these logs cannot be used specifically by the auditor, but you want to ensure that someone uses these various logs. As you know, through SAP system there are many logs are written. You need to be aware of these logs. This can assist you to ensure that you can give an appropriate authorization, you can grant appropriate access to this specific system. And moreover, how does this SAP logs are implemented and how these logs can be used for your support activity or audit control and monitoring activities. That's what we are going to see. This is some examples of how we can use audit information system in order to monitor these logs. For example, this is our display directory which we have seen, and we have couple of tools which we can use for system group, for the transport organizer tool and searching for objects and related reports, as well as this is for application log, and the next one is for system log and status display. SLG1, this is a transaction code for application log. Like this you can use all the information as already available audit information system, so we can use that menu path. However, we will not get into the system and see how does it look like in AS, since you already know how to navigate audit information system. So we will directly get into the topic. The first one is logging of specific activity. So what we can log, what kind of informations what we get from our SAP. We already know our audit logs, SAP audit log, what we can get, what we cannot get also we know. Okay, this section what we can get, logging of specific activity. Apart from audit log, what are all the other logs we have? The first one is application logging, and this application logging is specific for application. The next one is logging of workflow execution. As you know, SAP uses workflow technology to trigger some events and send us a workflow to specific users, to trigger them, to inform them, or to get some approval kind of things. Yeah, there are a lot of workflows which is used in SAP. We can log this also because SAP standard workflow is one of the very reliable mechanism for kind of business transaction, like kind of approvals, and you have a workflow which is triggered, and we can log this functionality. SAP, inside SAP we can log this triggers, and who triggered this one, sent to whom, when it was approved, and how this was forwarded, whether the workflow is forwarded to somebody else, this kind of log. So workflow is a quite bigger topic, so we can have a proper logging mechanism for workflow execution. Next one is using change documents. That means for our case we already know how do we check the change document for users. Same like that, you have change document for each business transaction, each business execution in SAP. Let's say if we created a sales order, we created a service order, or we created notification, who created it, what time it was created, all this kind of information already there. Whenever you change something in the service order or in the sales order, you that also logged into the specific that related change logs are already available. Then we will come to the logging of changes in the table data. We already know to change the tables, we can change it using SM30. Let's say we went and changed some tables directly, how we know who changed? So there is a possibility inside SAP we can monitor, or we can enable the change log for all the tables. All the table means not all the tables will be logged, the business critical tables will be logged. So we will come to that topic again. And logging of changes made using some transport system. So we already seen how does the transport system work, how can we monitor the transport, how can we check who approved, we have approval mechanism. So this also have a log, proper log. who made the changes, who released it, who approved, this kind of change log also, which is important for us. And logging of change made in user and authorization information, this we already know. We have very detailed authorization changes in PFCG, what object was changed, when it was changed, from where to where, this kind of information available in our authorization information. On top of it, in users, the same authorization information was assigned to which user, by whom, and it was removed by whom, and the profile assignment, user assignments already available. Also in the user master data, we have all the changes, like when this user was created, when it was deleted, when it was locked, unlocked, validity change, each and every changes we can retrieve from our user master. Same like user master, a very good example that we already know how it is being logged. Same like that, you have the same change logs for all business transaction as well. First one is application logging. To log an application or an object which needs to be logged, then we will use the transaction code called SLG0. The application log includes application messages, just like our system log including system messages. In general, these application logs are very heavily used in some of other SAP products like APO or SRM systems, because these systems are event managed, or this is for like event managers and warehouse management. We will use this kind of logs. The log traces the application event that which is sent out from, or which is transferred from your R3 to AP0 system. So these kind of logs are mainly used using this application logging. Basically, the experts in that specific area, they know how to log this specific application and what kind of messages this gives. The configuration for this application log is maintained using in the transaction code SLG0, and to view the application log we will use the transaction code SLG1. For view means to analyze the application log. The application log is a table structure, consists of several tables. Basically, if you see, this application log is basically a table structure which contains several SAP tables. So application generally what it does is it writes the entries into these tables using your standard SAP function module. These modules again, it's again based on your authorization concepts. It will also, the user also will be able to execute this. To understand the application log, you first need to understand the application processing that drives the data into this log. That's what, as I said, the application consultant will be able to understand this log better than what we understand this one. Even though it's related to security, to understand the whole concept behind what kind of information is available, then we need to have the application consultant with us to understand this one. Then you may think, then what is the use for us? So the concern here is on the perspective of system auditor. The application log contains all specific message for an application. If you are not an expert in this application, or understanding the individual messages can be difficult. However, you know there is somebody who can understand this specific messages, who is monitoring these ones. If you like to decode this message, you would like to understand this message, and you can find out this specific person and understand these messages. So our objective is that there is an application log which is available here. We can make use of it. Let's check in the system little bit. Let's go to our system. Okay, this is our trainer 1 user. Let's go to the first transaction SLG0. It says it's a cross client. Okay, it's fine. Okay, now we have the objects. Generally what we will do is you will add an object here. then inside the object then you will specify the sub objects. So each object you will specify sub objects. Let's see some SAP standard application logging. For example, let's say SM30 generate table maintenance view. Yeah, let's say if you go here and sub objects, you can see generate error function group which will be logged, and generate error with table views. So these kind of sub objects been logged. So like this, each application we can log it here. So then let's go to the next transaction code, that is SLG1, that is to view the log. Here you can specify the object which you would like to view. You specify the object and we can specify the sub object for this object. Okay, I'll say area, then I don't know, let me run it for a year maybe. Let's see if we found some logs, and we have all the selection criteria with which user, by transaction, by program. So we can analyze based on this, like based on some users. If you want to analyze, you can still use it. And we can also use log created by dialog user as well as batch users. So it's quite extensive information. So I don't have any information in SM30. There is no log created. Let's check for all log. Maybe for this specific month. No log found. Okay, here we have some specific log, maybe from our logging what we have done. So from transaction IW51, there is an SAP program, problem clause. Here it says everything is green. So it says actually this was executed by us sometime back. If you remember, this data table application was successfully set, and if you see the user which did this, all these activities, security trainer and the student 1. Yeah, these are all the application like IW51, IW52. For some reason we did something with this transaction codes. So as I said, as a security consultant or an auditor, I don't know what this means. Subordering log created. I don't know what is subordering. So we need to go back to the specific PM consultant or specific CS or PM consultant who is using this particular application. Then we can go and ask them what this means. Okay, this is about application log. Then let's go back. So the next topic which we are going to discuss about is logging of workflow execution, or this also called as workflow log, or somebody also called this as webflow logs, workflow execution log. It includes all the activities that has occurred during the execution of specific workflow. It includes each steps in the workflow, who executed the step, the action that has occurred, and the time frame in which the execution has taken place, because that is also very important, that which time this execution was triggered and when this was approved or when this was executed. This is very important. The workflow administrator, for example, who is responsible for this workflow, will be able to see all workflow logs, or each user who is in the particular workflow, who is responsible for a particular workflow, can see the workflow in their business workplace, like your office and business workplace. Business workplace means, let me show you what is business workplace. So let's say this is your inbox, SAP business workplace. So whenever there is a workflow come to one user, they will be able to find this workflow in their business workplace. So in the business workplace you have inbox where you will receive all the messages, and you have workflow. The specific user will be able to see only their specific workflows. So let's go back. To analyze this workflow, for example, the system admin or the workflow admin will use different type of transaction, for example SWI5 as well as like SWI2 and SWI1 also for workflow related activities. So the system admin can use this transaction to monitor this workflow. Again, you may think, okay, the workflow administrator will monitor this one, so what is the use for system auditors or for a security admin? In the perspective of auditor, you want to ensure someone monitors these workflow logs. That's what your objective is, that you wanted to, based on your business process, you will say somebody monitor this workflow log. Security perspective or an audit perspective, maybe you also want to make sure there is no workflow which is not completed. That means incomplete workflows, maybe it's hanging somewhere, so the workflow is triggered for a business reason that needs to be completed. That may be an audit requirement from your side or a security requirement from your side. Then you will use this transaction to monitor this. The reason is that you may be using this workflow engine to automate business process, the process that can simply release or approval process, like purchase order releasing process, to release the purchase order or to approve the purchase order, or some more complex business process, let's say some kind of electronic approval process that you implement in your workflow. Let's say if you see in PLM kind of scenarios, that you will have quite a lot of workflows which basically automates all your approval process. So this is quite important that you will log this workflow and you will make sure this workflow is completed on time. So the responsibility of this specific workflow, this workflow is triggered for a business reason, that it has to be completed. You may think, okay, this is not related to security, why do I need to do this one? So as a security administrator, first of all, you will be the one facing the auditors. If you are a security administrator, then you can explain or you can run this one and say, okay, this belongs to here. So that is very important you understand this kind of workflow and this log mechanism. Maybe it also helps you to identify some issues. Okay. And as an auditing perspective, that this is very important for an auditor to check the workflow, that workflow is all completed and it is consistent. Let's see in our system. Okay, first the transaction code is SWI5. So here is a workflow analysis. Here you can analyze based on your OM. Let's say select some user, then select an ID, then you can execute. But actually we don't have much data in this one, so we will not be able to find anything here. Let's say you select some ID. So basically we don't have any data, and maybe we can try the next transaction code, SWI2 underscore FREQ. SWI2 was the old one, this one is new one, the frequency. So here what we can do is we can select, let's say, last 365 days how many workflow was there, like say dialog, sub workflow and background. I select all, execute. Unfortunately we don't have any workflow in this system at all. Maybe we will go to a different system, different client, so they will have some workflows. Okay, here let's log in. We are in the client 1001. Let me execute the transaction here, maybe this one, last 365 days. Yeah. Here we have some workflow, access request, approval dialog. It's a specific workflow item. If you double click, you can see there are a lot of workflows which is triggered by this system. Let's say it has a request type and different informations, and if you can see this one, the status is already completed. It is some dialog steps. So you need to know what reason this was triggered. This again, the user who triggered this workflow, they will be knowing this better. This is basically an workflow coming from the GRC system. So like this we can monitor the workflows. And the next transaction code is SWI1. Here also we can say creation date. So we have the same kind of workflow here. This all this thing has completed, some workflow is cancelled. So like this we can monitor this. Double click and you can see the content of this workflow. Okay, so we have quite a number of transaction code, 3 transaction code, SWI5, SWI2 underscore frequency, and SWI1. Next one, what we are going to see is logging of change document. If you see, for many application in SAP, the changes are logged when the changes occurs. That means, let's say, for example, if you are creating a sales order in the SD or in MM or FI or in material management, when you are creating a material master, that is the time when it is going to be recorded. So users who are using the application in the daily basis can view this change log. So these change logs are being saved in several tables. There is a header table called CDHDR. This is a header table. So all the changes which occurs in the SAP system, the header informations are saved in these specific tables. As I said, the related informations will be saved in their own specific documents, their own specific change log table in that respective application area. For example, if MM04 is a material change and VD04 is the customer change, these change documents, the header information will be saved in this table and related information will be available in the related tables for MM04 and related table for VD04. Normally there will be a menu called display changes where you should be able to view the change logs. These change logs are very frequently changed, and it's also very useful in order to identify some of the issues through the change log, as well as for the purpose of auditing. Also it's very useful. A change document tracks the changes of SAP objects. The document is created independently from the actual database changes. The change document structure consists of change document header, and you will have change document items in the change document number. Let's say change document header, that there's a table which we already seen. The header data of the change document object ID in particular object class is stored in each of the change document header. We will see that. Let's see that in the system, then we can understand this in a better. So go to the transaction SE16 table browser, then go to the table CDHDR change document header. Then let me take some 01.04.2014 till today. It's quite a lot. Okay, let's see. Okay, now we can see here what are all the changes which we have done. Let's say the trainer 1 used SU01 to do some changes, some address 3, that was the change document which was done. On SU10 also the trainer 1 did some change document. This kind of quite a number of change document which is done by this user. And the PFCG, you can see there is some changes which has been done. In IW51, if you see, the trainer did some changes. We need to actually understand what this means in order to find out what exactly this change document means. For us, for example, we already know, okay, this is the role and we did something there. Okay, this is the header information. So as I said, this is a header information, this is a document number. The related information for this will be linked using this document number. So this is the header information available in the header table. This header table have a document number. Using this document number, you have change items. So you can go to the respective documents and find the change items based on this document number. And we also have this application object change, so you can find out what was changed. Let's say you can see here something is differentiated as U, something is set as I. If you just click here, object change, select here, if you see, U means it was updated, it was an update. I means it's insert, that means we created something. E means it's a delete, and that is single field document delete. And D means it's a complete delete, and J means an insert, but it's a single field document. That is the way we can identify what was done in the particular time or with the specific document. So based on the change document number, then we can track this changes what was done in this specific transaction code or the specific document. I would like to mention one more transaction code in this context, that is transaction code SCDO. This transaction code provides the change document object overview. Let's say I go to some object. Let's go to some object. Okay, take any object, let's say business partner. If you select this object and say generate info, then this gives you the generation information of the specific document. Each object will have generation information for the specific document. From there you can track if there is any generation has been done in the specific object. Now you think, how can I use this one in our audit perspective or security perspective? Because of change documents are used so heavily in SAP system, they can assist you with debugging of authorization errors. So for example, to check some of the authorization errors, then you can go back and check the change document, how it was done and who changed it, and this kind of informations. When you analyze the issues on, let's say based on the authorization, let's say you have a change document that should have been not done by somebody's user ID, that you are only the person who is authorized to do this kind of informations. Like this kind of analysis you can do in your security job, or also as well as the audit requirement. In audit job you can go and see, okay, who has changed and why, who is the user, what was the action, whether it is updated or inserted, this kind of informations. So next one what we are going to see is logging changes in table data. So using this analysis you can answer quite many questions. Who made the changes, what was changed, and when the changes were made. So if you wanted to analyze this kind of analysis, or this, if you want to answer this kind of questions, then using this change log in the table you can find out these informations. The logs are analyzed based on the customizing of their context. So let's say if your log is also enabled and this log is going to be a quite lot of data, then you can also do archiving, or it can be also deleted, otherwise it can be also archived. Especially when you are doing archiving, when you also need to ensure that this logs related to the archiving documents also been archived. For performance reason, the productive data should not be locked, meaning to say there is a transaction or some business transaction or productive data which is already been logged by SAP. You should not additionally enable logging for this specific reason. For example, let's say table called Mara, it's a table which has all the material master. This whenever we create the material master in MM01, this is somehow we are logged. That's what we seen in our previous exercise using the application, using the logging of change documents. You anyway log this one in different tables. So you do not want to enable this for specific table, because this is a productive data which is going to be a quite huge data. So if you enable for this kind of data, then it's going to be a very big, and it can have big impact in the system. So the actual objective of enabling change log, that means you need to enable change log in the specific tables and use the change log monitor the data changes in the table. Let's say power user who can monitor the changes in the table, so they will see the change log and monitor this one, how this data are being changed or who changed the data. We have a transaction code for this called SCU3. Maybe we can check that in the system. If you go to SCU3, 3, then we say at the moment the table logging is not currently activated in the system. So right now in our system we did not enable this, so it's give a message. So using this transaction code, we can analyze the change documents in the tables. Let's say when you say click this evaluate, then they ask you to specify the customizing object or table, then you specify the start and end date, then you execute, then it will analyze the change log of the specific table. It will also give you the user ID and the date and time when what was changed from old value with the new value. And list of log tables, if you click here, then it will give the details of all the tables which was enabled for change log. This is also very important. So in normal scenarios, let's say for the audit requirement, the customer specific table, that means the tables was created by the customer, needs to be logged properly, meaning to say under the assumption all the logs for the SAP standard tables are already there. If it is not there, then this is been logged by some different other means, same like what we have seen in our example like MM01, that you have a different table log, different change log, so you don't need to have a table log. So if you see here in this system, these are all the tables which has the table logging enabled. One more thing we need to remember, that it is always better only the business critical table should be logged. So it's not like by default just go and log all the table, because again this is going to increase your database size. So we need to make sure that you enable the table which is business critical. So in order to enable the change log, we already seen that we got a message change log is not enabled in the system. First thing what we need to do is we need to enable the change log in the system level, that is using the parameter. Let's say go to REZ11, go to rec/client. If you see, this is then activating or deactivating of table log. What the output for this one is like right now it is off. Now we can specify your client. Actually, you can specify your client. That means we can enable the table log for specific client. Let's say if you see the documentation, it says, you can see here this parameter used to activate and deactivate client dependence table logging, and it depends on the setting, it will log the specific tables. Off is means it is off. Right now it's not enabled. All means all clients are enabled, but to specific table enable in the table, that we will come to that again. This is in system level, we are telling the system yes, table logging is enabled. So into that, somebody goes to that specific table, then system will check again. So if you wanted to enable for specific client, then you can mention it here like this. This is a correct form, this is an incorrect form. Say record client equal to client comma then next client and comma, like this. We can have more than one client also can be enabled. Okay, once this is done, then we need to go to the system using the transaction code SE13. So our table, we had we set security, we created one table before. Let's see that. Yeah, we set security table. If you see that, let's display. So if you see here, this is the setting which you need to enable, log data changes. If this is enabled, then all the changes in the security table will be logged. Right now this is not enabled, so this is for the client, the table specific setting. So whenever you enable this setting, only that will log the table. So the parameters to enable the table logging for the entire system or entire client, then each specific table you have to specify whether you wanted to log it or not. So if I go to change mode, then simply click this one, then it is enabled. Say save, it will create. Then now this will be enabled. This is a way to enable the table log. You can also see that in SE11. If you go to SE11 and go to display, in here what you can do is you go to technical setting, then this will comes to the same screen of SE13. Here you can see we already enabled it. So either you enable in SE13, otherwise in SE11 also you can enable this. Okay, now this is enabled for table logging. At the moment in our system we did not enable table logging in the system level, so we do not have any logs in the system. And one more thing we need to remember during the table logging, the logic behind the table logging is like that. Let's say if you are editing a table or a program level or going to SM13, SM30 will not be a big problem. Let's say you are editing this table, some customized table in a program level, some program keep triggering this changing of this table, and we have table logging enabled for this table. So that case what happens is, the normal logic is first it will go to the log table and it will log the changes, then it will update the actual entry in the table. Let's say the actual logic behind that is, whenever you do any changes, your changes also logged in the change log. The change log, you are going to have user, date, time, what are the old value, what are the new value. So it's a quite lot of information than the actual information what you are going to save in the table. So this is going to create the load. Let's say if particular table is being accessed by so many people, then this can bring to a situation that this table is getting locked by the application, because it will going to take more than the actual time, because you are going to log each and every entries. So that will become a problem. So you have to be quite careful to decide whether you wanted to log this table, or maybe there will be a lot of other alternative solution. If you wanted to have a change log, you can have it in a different format as well, same like what we do in applications. So if let's say this particular table will be updated every time, and I cannot enable the change log but for this table, but you want to have change log for this specific activity, you have a lot of other ways. Like you can find solution on programmatical way in ABAP. You can do the changes you can save the changes in a different table and then link between these two tables, how it can be merged or how it can be compared. There's a lot of ways to do that. So this is one problem also. I said this is a practical problem. If it is too much of people or too much of user going to access at the same time, then it can create some problems. So let's see how for auditors or a security consultant, how does this table logging is going to help. Especially the table logging is very helpful during the audit. If you have very sensitive table, it is always recommended to have table logging enabled for this table, so that whenever any changes happen, then you can identify who made the changes, why these changes were made, and what are the voltage change. Okay, let's go back to our presentation. Let's see what is the next topic. Next topic is logging the changes made using the transport system. We already know how does the transport system work, the transport request. So every changes which you do in your landscape should be transported as a TR. So you should never allow any changes directly into production or quality. You should do development system and quality and production. So whenever you transport these changes, you know how to create a transport request. This transport request will have some files. It's called transport file. It's a physical file which will be created in your operating system. The best approach in this scenario is that you keep this physical file in one directory, one shared directory with the development, quality and production, or maybe some more systems. Wherever you are going to share this particular transport, you keep it in one shared directory and transport to different system. This will be done by basis team. It is known to us as a security consultant, as an auditor. That is very important that we need to understand this concept, that the reason why we need to keep it in one transport directory is because if, let's say, you have a 3 transport directory for 3 system and you have a file in development, when you wanted to transfer it to quality, then you need to copy this file physically from development to quality. The file also physically moves. Then once it comes to quality, then you will import into quality. Once it's done, testing done, then you will physically move to production. Then first of all, you are going to replicate the same content of 3 different places. And secondly, the change log, when it was released, when it was created, when it was released, will not be available in all the systems. So if you are keeping it one central place, then this log will be available in all systems. So let's say if I go to development and put my TR and check the log, then I know, okay, this was released from development in this date, and it was imported in QA in this date, and this was approved on this date and imported into production in this specific date. Like this information you can get it from all the systems, so it will be consistent. So that's the reason that you need to have the transport directory in one central system or one central location. Okay, so whenever you release a transport from development system, that will be an export. It will create something called co-file and data file. The co-file will contain the attribute of the TR, and the data file will contain the actual data of the TR. That means actual content, actual objects of the TR. And as soon as you release from the development, that will create the TR file into your transport. That will be an export of the copy, export of the file. Then it comes to transport directory. So when you import in the QA, it will import directly into the QA system. Then once it's done, once the QA is done, then you can directly import into productive system. So the transport log also very useful in order to check the issues. Like if you found some issues in the productive system suddenly, then you can find what was the transport. We already know with the SC03, you can find it out, what role was transported and when it was transported and what was the root cause of the problem. So this is also quite helpful. So as an auditor also, it's very important that you need to understand the transport logic, because all the changes, whatever you do the changes, it should be related to a change request which is approved by somebody, and based on the company policy. If you wanted to identify these kind of changes, then you need to understand this transport logic. Next one, what we are going to discuss about is change log of the user on authorization. This we already seen. We will not get into very much details. In the change log for the user, you can find out the change log for the specific date or specific user. For all user, for specific activity, we can get all the details. And For the role also as well, we can find the roles, what was changed in a specific date, or specific user on a specific date with the specific user, what all the roles they changed. This kind of information you can get it from SU01 as well as PFCG change logs. The next what we are going to see is logging of HR report. This is a very interesting topic. Using the configuration setting in IMG, that IMG means SPRO, you can define the report you want to log. If you activate this function, the record is created in the database for each time you start this report. Why? This is only specific to HR, because HR is very critical. Even you run a report also very critical. So you can also specify whether this record should be created only for online or background job or both. Let's say this is also a problem. Let's say if you run it online, okay, then we record it. But if you run it in background, what happens? You can run it in background, create a spool and send it to your email address. Then you already got the information. So this specifies that you can run it in foreground or background, or you can both. Then it will log the report. The HR report logs contains many information like what report and the report title, user, and date when the report was started and the time when the report was started. This kind of information. Logging is enabled in an IMG configuration. If you go to system, if you go to SPRO for your IMG configuration, then you go to SAP reference IMG. Then you go to personal management. Here, personal management. Then you will go to personal administration here. Inside personal administration, tools, then inside tools, authorization, revision, log report starts. Here if you see, you can enable the log reports or record online or record in the batch, or record online, protect batch. That means for your dialog process as well as background process. So let's say if you don't have this log here, you can simply add a program, then you can enable it. Then you can enable this, let's say both of them, then you say save, then it will ask you to create a TR, then you can transport it. Then okay, in our case we don't do this. Then how do we know this program is executed using a different report? If you go to /NSE38, so you have a report called RPUPROTD. This is a report which will enable you to see the log. This is a report, let me repeat it again, RPUPROTD. This is the report name. When you execute this report, then you can actually specify what kind of program you are trying to see, or like all programs, and date and which user executed. Let's see, we have any log. Yeah, we have one log which was coming from 2001. Somebody executed one of the program which is in the table, so we have this one. So basically what you will get is that what report and the title, user, and what date and what time they executed this program. So it does not have what has happened inside. So you know, okay, this report was executed by this person. So basically these are all report related one. If let's say if you did any changes, anyway you have the change log. So for programs we do not have this kind of logs. In that case, you for a report, normal report, we do not have logs. So for that we can use this log of report starts. So whenever somebody start these reports, which is specified in this customizing activity, then we know who started this one. There is one more program. Let's say this is for housekeeping. Let's say you have enabled a lot of things, but you wanted to remove this log. Then we have a second program, that is PROTU. This program, what it does, it will delete the log, then based on the reports you can delete this log. Basically these are all critical ones. Normally it should not be deleted, or again this depends on your company policy how you are going to define this. This is about logging of HR reports, and these are also some menu paths for audit information security. This is for transport logging and operating system. Then find specific program in the table change request. Find the change related to user data using SAP user group tools and request for UR table. Then find changes related to human resource data, that is for the request for PA table. Then research what data is currently involved in the change request, that is for the object analysis. Then review application log and discover we have quite a lot of information in AIS. As I mentioned, we will not go to each and every of these transactions or these informations. You can explore this information by yourself. See, almost I think we have covered almost everything, so we can just call this one from AIS. Otherwise the transaction code, whatever we have seen, we can call this transaction code directly. With this we are coming to the end of this session. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next session. Bye bye.